Hello, I'm Admiral Ellis of the TTO, and welcome back to the Admiral's Musings. This is just going to be a quick, short little thing so I can tell you a little story, and I won't get carried away, I promise. I have company, so this is very limited, and I don't believe in sending displaced messages, as in I don't believe in making a video at another point in time, uh, presumably in the future, and sending it back to when I have to post it. I'm not going to wait until I have time and then make this and then send it back and post it. You're just getting this when I can make it and I don't have much time. So this past week from last Saturday, the last time you heard from me, it's taken about a month of my time. Reason being is it's a school vacation week, and when I'm not being supervised, as in when I don't have to be at school, I normally take a lot of time off from working, essentially being in this physical, not being this physical self, but being in this life, I guess. So that let me run a bunch of missions. I wrote up a bunch of reports that needed to be done and filed. I did a bunch of interviews with Mr. Malone and stuff. Stuff fell off my desk. But that's beside the point entirely. This yesterday for me, actually 2 days ago, really. Okay, well, Covenant at one point or another started experimenting with time travel technology. It was not indicated under any of their records because it was such a dismal failure, and the prophets tried to keep things away from people. You know. However, a couple of their attempts were going to screw some things up, so we had to take care of that. The Time Travelers Organization had to take care of that. When you start messing with the timeline, you start messing with us. And I don't mean that in a, we'll beat you up kind of sense. I mean, just in all seriousness, we're not going to let you break things. That's our job in the universe. We are the successors to the Time Lord Council after it was destroyed in the last Great Time War. They essentially did our job, even though we were around when they were around, or at least for part of it. We actually had some conflict. I might not want to get into that because the doctor gets upset whenever I talk about that. Although, I'm not sure if the 12th, with what's happened to him and what he remembers now, I'm not sure if he will get so upset about me talking about the Time Lords anymore, or any of us. We just normally didn't talk about it. That aside, there was a Covenant CSS, or is it CCS? Covenant Cruiser, Covenant Battle Cruiser, which had taken a bunch of foreign artifacts, notably one of these crystals that you keep hearing about at the Fall of Reach, I believe, and in First Strike. Very, very weird crystals, time-altering. And they were going to use this ship to send it into the future to determine the outcomes of battles, and then change their strategies appropriately. Of course, we couldn't let them do this. This ship was in the debris field around a planet whose name I can't think of, probably because it didn't have a name. It had a designation. It was under the Stargate designation. It was P3X 3926. I'm not sure if that was ever featured in any Stargate episode, but yeah. So it was in the debris field around the planet, and we had the job taken out. Now we had the Admiral, but the Admiral probably wouldn't stand up against a giant Covenant ship, considering the Admiral's pretty small when you think about it. And we had all the shuttles on board and stuff, but we had a nice, very handy team of Spartans, which you send in pretty much whenever there's a Covenant thing to deal with, because they'll beat the crap out of anyone. So they went in there, and they had the job of making the reactors go critical, which you wouldn't think it's that hard. Apparently it is, because they got down to the reactor room, fought their way through it, and we were going to beam them back out once they got everything set, but they were getting shot at, and it severed a bunch of connections. It broke the reactors, essentially, and they just, the protocols on them just automatically cooled and shut down. This was, I believe, before the Covenant started stealing UNSC AI scraps, so their ships were actually more intelligent, if that makes any sense at all. They copy things. If you don't know the Covenant, all they do is steal your stuff and make duplicates of it. They absorb technology, and they work with it. Now, what I'm trying to say is, the ship was now drifting, had no power, but we were worried about them calling for reinforcements if we showed ourselves. Because if they did, then we would have just been absolutely swamped, and we didn't want this to turn into a huge battle because it wasn't supposed to. This ship supposedly just vanished off radar and was never heard from again. So, taking from that, we couldn't board it anymore because they knew we were there. They were thoroughly prepared if we were going to try and board it again, and we didn't have that many people on board the Admiral anyways. I mean, you can send in a team of Spartans and they'll do their work, but once they get shot up, it's that's your trump card going away. The Spartans were actually pretty badly injured from this. It was what team is it? I think it was Red Team that we had on board. It was one of the they did service during the fall of Reach. I believe they died on Reach. Probably. Can't remember their whole backstory. However, that was their power armor was kind of fried. So that was that. We didn't want to go in guns blazing because they still had minor amounts of power. They still had telemetry and communications. They probably were. Well, actually, I'm not going to say they were calling for backup because knowing elite leaders, they probably were not. He probably wasn't going to admit that his ship was severely crippled. They tend to be very arrogant and assume that they'll be fine no matter what. However, so because of this, we knew that we wouldn't have any reinforcements unless they sensed an actual threat, like something for them to fight. And they believed that the Spartans had been killed, or at least they were still hiding aboard somewhere. We'd beam them off. The Admiral is a Federation ship. It has transporters, just like the Enterprise. So we had the bright idea to use the ship's tractor beam instead to send hurtling one of the giant pieces of debris at them. Now, first we had to knock out communications. And we did this with a cloaked puddle jumper. So they wouldn't... Essentially, we had the idea to knock out communications after we'd trashed the idea of going in with a full frontal assault. We sent the puddle jumper out there, we vaporized their communications antennas, and then they were deaf, dumb, and blind, and dead in the water. So we sent this giant piece of debris at them. It was a, can't remember who held that planet before. It might have actually been a remnant of a gold ship from a couple hundred years earlier. But it was this massive, massive piece of black hull, and it just kind of split this Covenant cruiser in two. Which was really, really cool to watch. Not to say that it wasn't tragic for all those aboard, but we got our job done in the most spectacular fashion possible, and they never messed with this again. Also, we managed to recover the crystal, so that's another plus, because those are always useful, and they're always in very short supply. We don't have another way of making them. And, the Doctor has forbid? We're not allowed to go back to Alteran times. I don't know why. I think the Time Lords and the Alterans had some sort of strife. But, I think it might have been Janus that spurred it, actually. I need to look into that. That'd be one hell of a story to uncover. I'll need to get the Doctor's permission first, of course. But aside from that, I had a very, very entertaining month, or week, off of school. Anyone else ask me what I'm doing? Oh, you know, I'm just sitting at home playing video games. Now I'm saving the universe. In all honesty, though, I owe that I owe the suggestion of hurtling debris at them to one of my crew members. So he's kind of a pyro. He likes to destroy things in creative ways. But yeah, so it's always fun being out there on the Admiral. But you know, keep getting these premonitions that something's going to happen to her. Oh well. Keep on staring at the stars and you might see a brilliant flash one of these nights.